Well, good evening, everybody. I am glad to be with you guys here tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm, of course, Jacob Winograd. I am the host of the Biblical Anarchy Podcast here at the Libertarian Christian Institute, part of our Christians for Liberty network. And I'm back with my good friends, Hodey and Jeremiah, tonight. And we're going to be diving into some stuff that, no one else is talking about, because I think the entire nation forgot that there's an election in 2 days.
Yeah.
So, it's probably the least important election in our lifetime, one would have to say. No, we're going to, sorry that someone was not paying attention and got hit with the loudest thud from the intro countdown. I apologize for that. The new intro countdown, I actually might need some feedback because I might need to audio balance that, and but let me know if that was it just like surprising or was it too loud, because I can dial the volume back if it's a little too much. But yeah, tonight's going to be an interesting one. After I'm done kind of doing my introduction here, I'm actually going to hand off the reins to Hodey here, and he's going to be moderating a bit of a debate. But just to kind of lay the groundwork for how we got here, this isn't the first time I've done this sort of conversation. I actually have moderated a debate on Chase versus Trump. I had Alex Bernardo versus Dave versus Goliath. And I also had Chase on my show. And I've been kind of trying to figure out where I stand on where I'm going to vote, if I'm going to vote, how I think other people should vote for the last, I don't know, a long time. Go back to the Libertarian Convention, go back even before that. And there's been some recent developments in, the lead up to the election. And we decided, the three of us in our little group chat, that why don't we have one last hurrah where we see if we can, figure out for, once and for all, if this is going to, what we think libertarians should be thinking, what they should be at least considering going into this election. Just the usual disclaimers that as a nonprofit, the Libertarian Christian Institute, we're not here to tell you who to vote for. We're not here to make any political endorsements or anything like that, but rather this debate is just hopefully going to be educational. It's going to help showcase the ideas surrounding this election, surrounding this presidential election in particular, and things that libertarians and Christians and just people in general need to be thinking of. So because moderating the discussions hasn't gotten me anywhere, I am going to enter into the fray tonight as a debater, and Hodey's going to be moderating it. So I'm excited. I'm actually this is a weird debate because I kind of hope I lose. Because I'm taking the side where I'm going to be supporting Donald Trump and saying that he's actually good for liberty. If Jeremiah can win this debate and convince me and the audience to not do that, I would actually be happier. So this is an interesting one, but I'm hoping it'll be a lot of fun. I hope you boys feel the love. I think you've been on my show now like 3 or 4 times in the past 2 months. So yeah, let's get into it. Hodey, if you want to give any, quick introductions, lay out the format for the debate if you feel like people would be interested in that, and then we can get into it. You are now in control.
Appreciate it. All right, so this will be a moderated debate, Oxford style, with a few adjustments made just for time constraints, but both of our debaters have agreed on the changes that we would make. So the debate is regarding this question: could a Trump presidency be good for liberty? This will have Jacob Winograd taking the affirmative and Jeremy Harding taking the negative. Each debater will give a 7-minute introduction to make their case. Following that, each debater will have 6 questions given to them with 3 minutes to answer. After each answer, the opponent will be able to give a 1-minute rebuttal. Then there will be 20 minutes of open discourse between you two. I will time the two to ensure approximately equal airtime. Should one speak longer than the other by more than 30 seconds, I will give the other debater the closing words during this section. Finally, each debater will have 2-minute closing statements. When your time is up, During any portion of this debate, I will make this signal indicating for you to wrap it up. Please make notes if you feel you must say something or respond and don't have the time during your section. I ask that you, if you have a rebuttal when it is not time to rebut, to save that for your conclusion. With that, let's begin with Jeremiah, and your time starts now.
I will play black. I always play black. Jacob, you can have the first opening.
Oh, okay. Jacob, I will start with you then.
All right. So the resolution states that could Donald Trump be a Donald Trump presidency be good for liberty? Well, the resolution is formatted in a way that if I just wanted to be, really just like win a debate to win a debate, I could just be like, well, all I have to establish is that it could, not that it definitely will or even that it's likely to. But I don't want to do that because although I have done that in the past when I used to do speech and debate, those kind of debates are just boring, and the spirit of debate is actually more what I care about. I care about actually getting to the truth. So I would say that for me to actually win, I need to not only I can't just go, well, Donald Trump could just read Anatomy of the State, which I have right here behind me, tomorrow and become an ANCAP and just become the next Javier Milei and base that on that could happen. It's in the realm of things that are scientifically, materially possible. But that's not necessarily a strong case, I would say. Rather, I think we should look at what Donald Trump is running on. I think we should look at what team is around Donald Trump. It would be also fair to look at his past performance as well. And we should try to make a estimated guess based upon maybe not total optimism, but not total pessimism, but just trying to be very objective on if there is likely benefit, and I would say net benefit to liberty for a Donald Trump term should he win in this year, obviously, win this Tuesday. I'm compelled, at least for the purpose of this debate, to say that I think that there is a case to be made that it could very well be a positive and a net positive on that. I think that Donald Trump is a very flawed person and not a libertarian, and I want to open up with that. And I actually expect that very often during this debate, Jeremiah will be bringing up all of the same things that I could probably say about not only Donald Trump as a person, but Donald Trump as a politician, probably Donald Trump as a businessman, things that he's talking about doing, tariffs and protectionism, and really bad on Israel, and not the best on free speech. There's a lot of things to rail Donald Trump on. And I know that Jeremiah wants to make a euphemism on that, but we're not going to do that right now. This is a nice, friendly, PG Christian podcast, Jeremiah, okay? Got to keep the innuendos subtle. So, there'll be probably plenty of criticisms of Trump that I can make, that Jeremiah will make, and I will nod my head on, be 100% correct. We just have to weigh those against the potential benefits of a Trump presidency. I think that Trump is running on some positions that are clearly libertarian or libertarian adjacent issues, freeing Ross, abolishing the Department of Education, potentially ending the income tax, although he's connecting at the tariffs. But I will say, as much as I am against tariffs, that in the sort of trying to pick the lesser evil, I would say that the income tax is worse than tariffs. So I'd be willing to make that trade. And then I think that Trump, although he's bad on Israel, I think Kamala Harris is also bad on Israel. And the degree of separation between them is not much if it exists. And so I would say that based on Trump's statements on what he views about Russia and Ukraine and just generally not really being anti-war, but at least not being adamantly pro-war like the uniparty establishment likes to be, I'd say that's kind of a good opening assessment of different things that I think Trump brings to the table, and plus the many people he's brought onto his team who are, again, not libertarians, but that are a departure from the status quo in the direction of liberty on many things. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk. There's a lot of people, again, none of those are libertarians, and all of them also have plenty of authoritarian policies on their resume in terms of things that they want to support. So I'm not here to defend Trump wholesale or those people wholesale, rather to say that when it comes to things like increasing freedom in certain key areas, which I would broadly identify as free speech, education, healthcare, and becoming less of an empire and more of a republic again, I find that it's enough of a deviation from the norm that for the policy potential and for the impact on the Overton window, that libertarians might consider that's enough positive to consider casting a vote for him on Tuesday, because all those things together could be important developments in the slow march towards liberty. So I think it's a good opening statement. I'll yield the rest of my time and let Jeremiah eviscerate me for the filthy statist I have become.
So,
Jeremiah, go ahead. 7 minutes starts now.
So to start off and be clear, I think that there are plenty of people who are, for a lack of a better term, scared. And it's understandable. And I'm not trying to say that it's not. We are dealing with a behemoth state that is larger than it's ever been, an empire that has scaled the globe bigger than any empire in recorded history. And that empire is being helmed by some truly vicious and evil, bloodthirsty people. Trump is one of them. When I knew this debate was going to happen, because I was, let's just say, less than pleased seeing Jacob's post saying he was going to vote for him, the immediate reaction was to go send a message in the group DM that we have on Twitter. And that group DM then lit up. We had the conversation about getting this going. And I thought of something really funny to do. So I did that. What I did was I wanted to get a pulse on how people who I believe to be like Jacob in mentality might be thinking. People like his audience might be thinking. I wanted to do an informal survey, and so I did it in my schizo way, because I thought a boring survey about various things would probably not get much traction. So instead, I poked the bear, and I created a collage of old Dave Smith tweets and used those tweets as a way to not only enrage people in my extended network, but also get him to respond and get his network in on it. So I did this for the purpose of getting an informal survey of right libertarian attitudes surrounding Trump being good for libertarianism. And it worked like a charm. My first tweet that I tagged him in got a significant amount of traction on its own. I also boosted it to several networks to increase the chance that this would work. Then, predictably, from somebody who has 5.5 plus thousand Twitter followers, I got ratioed by Dave Smith, who definitely went in my replies and took that bait. So the reason I'm bringing all of that up is because of that, I have had hundreds of messages in the past 24 hours about not only various slurs that I was called, including faggot and a bunch of retard and a bunch of things like that, but also actual positions that these people hold. And I think that I've pinned down several that seem to make the cut. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that make the freaking kids trans. Is not a good point, because Trump specifically said that he would condone parental consent for trans surgeries on minors. But like that aside, because transing the kids came up too much, let's drill in on the no new wars thing that a lot of these people claim that he's for. Trump made John Bolton his security advisor. He empowered Mike Pompeo. His picks for defense included General Dynamics' Jim Mattis, Raytheon lobbyist Mark Esper, and Boeing's Pat Shanahan. He was breaking Obama's records for defense spending with record defense spending of many hundreds of billions. He assassinated an Iranian general in an event that probably precipitated toward October 7th. He sanctioned Russia and also blocked shipments to Ukraine, thus heightening tensions in the region and probably causing a significant amount of the strife that would eventually create invasion conditions. He put boots on the ground in Taiwan. He removed Obama-era drone reporting mandates so that he could start breaking records without telling anybody about it. And then he broke those records. He has stacked half of his defense department officials with people connected to military contractors. He broke records for arms sales to foreign countries. He's famous for saying that the Pentagon is probably in love with him, which tracks because he declared a state of a martial emergency during COVID so he could send money to the Pentagon to fight the crisis, allegedly. He was a friend of Saudi Arabia while they waged genocide in Yemen, killing hundreds of thousands of people. He abandoned previous treaties, damaging relations with the whole world, while schmoozing with dictators anywhere he could get a photo op. He restored certain aspects of surveillance, including warrantless FISA searches. He did regime change operations in Venezuela and a series of BRICS-aligned countries. He bombed Syria multiple times and conducted a raid that finished off the al-Awlaki family by murdering a little girl and leaving her to bleed out after being shot in the neck. She was an American citizen. He did all of this and so much more to empower the military-industrial complex, and make no mistake that he will do it again, promising military budget surges in speeches and documents, being completely atrocious on how to treat the people that actually fight the wars that he hyperfunded. So pardon me when I don't believe that the architect of the lockdowns and this military and intelligence industrial complex was somehow fighting the deep state or opposing war from a policy level, because he allegedly didn't have any new ones, all while he never actually ended a single one, and he made many worse. And then we get to the lockdowns, where Trump was the architect. And this is an inconvenient fact that a lot of people would like to forget, but he was the one in charge of the initial COVID policy. He hired Fauci. He promoted masks. He promoted lockdowns and social distancing before it was cool. He also used it as an excuse to inflate the economy by $7 trillion and had the single largest money printing in U.S. history. Ron Paul is shaking in his boots. He used this to fund
the best economy.
He used it to fund the Pentagon because he claimed we are at war. And he used xenophobic rhetoric to wage disinformation campaigns that targeted Chinese citizens instead of his own biolabs over there. This is now on record. Meanwhile, the person who was actually responsible for the virus was likely the person he appointed, Anthony Fauci, running experiments in Wuhan labs connected to the U.S. government. If all these policies helped, they were a little too little and a little too late, being that he consistently tried to claim that the virus was not a big deal prior to all these measures. And then, while the virus got worse and worse, consistently trying to claim that it wasn't as bad as it was, then locking down the country after his lack of policies seemed to have the opposite effect of helping. And if they didn't help, then we know who was responsible for pushing the first ineffective policies and lockdown strategies, and how he would respond likely in the case of a new health emergency, which is not well at all. And having a hack like RFK Jr. on his cabinet doesn't make me any more confident in his abilities, nor did it make the Libertarian Party more convinced to support that man when they gave him basically none at the LNC. Somehow, they're funding his campaign. Okay, well,
let's save any rest for the conclusion.
I'll just say that somehow they're funding his campaign now. Funny how that works, Angela.
If you want to take 30 seconds to finish your point, I mean,
okay. If you don't mind, then go ahead and have it.
Trump pushed a bump stock ban. He pushed for red flag raids and seizures of firearms. He pushed for the murder of drug dealers and the surveillance of anarchists and anti-government people who he claimed were all scum and criminals. He did this while making excuses for various white nationalist orgs and marches, and making an environment where many people felt emboldened to throw a weird tantrum, and it seemed like he might not be accepted into the office again. That was not an insurrection. It was barely a riot. It was mostly a tantrum thrown by people who were used to getting their political way for years and then suddenly not getting it. And I'll just finish by saying he's a fascist and we should understand that going forward into this debate. I've got more, but I think I loaded my first half there a little bit heavy, so.
That's all right. We can save that for the conversation portion and the conclusion. So question time for Jacob. Republicans were quite loud about the Epstein files until finding out Donald Trump's name was all over them. Famously, a jury found Trump guilty of sexual assault, and the judge found Trump responsible for rape. Can a man who would qualify for a frequent flyer program on Epstein's Lolita Express be trusted, especially with the Supreme Court's ruling that could make it so he could give himself immunity when he sexually assaults more people?
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump's disconnect. Let's take this. Well, first of all, how much time do I have on these answers?
3 minutes.
Make sure 3 minutes. Okay, so taking it in sort of order of like general to specific. Yeah, Trump's general behavior when it comes to marriage, sex, how he treats women, yeah, it's not good by like normal people's standards, and it's abhorrent by Christian standards. So I'm not going to run cover for that. I will say that I have not done like tons and tons of research into like the rape case allegations. I've seen people fight it out on my wall, and they share all sorts of links, and I've read through them, and I just come away kind of going like, well, I don't know. And that's not really a defense of him, or, you know, at most it's I'm not necessarily willing to hang him by those accusations, but certainly it's a number of accusations, and one can wonder, right? When it comes to the Epstein stuff, again, I don't know, because it kind of feels like there's a lot of people who would stand to gain, who like probably have access to that list and who would like have released stuff on Trump if they had it already. Of course, maybe it's like mutually assured destruction, because the people that might be able to expose him could potentially be exposing themselves. So again, it's a lot of like, I get where the criticism's coming from, and it bears some like weight. I'm not saying there's nothing there, but it's like, well, just without enough concrete evidence one way or the other, it's hard to put it this way. It's like I kind of feel like so much of the government and so much of the people involved are all involved in shady stuff, not just politically, but in their personal lives. And I've always said, I think we're ruled by a bunch of pedophilic satanic cultists. So I'm not convinced that it bears too much weight in terms of what comparing him to Harris, comparing him to any other average politician. It kind of seems like a wash to dive into that stuff. So it's not part of my calculus, I guess, when it comes to this.
Jeremy, you have 1 minute to respond.
I don't see whether or not other people have done something as a reason to not hold somebody accountable, especially from a libertarian position. The fact that, Trump might be guilty of covering up his sex crimes with children, or at least somebody else's, is enough for me to say that he's not a libertarian and that he's actively anti-libertarian. So I have things about that situation as well that I'm sure I can bring up later, that were going to be in my opening statement. But it's occurring to me that my opening statement would have been like 20 minutes if I had actually said it all. But either way, the general gist of it is the idea that because other people are also doing the same corrupt things, we shouldn't hold Trump accountable for having done those things, or say that we cannot support him from either a Christian perspective or a libertarian perspective, seems to me to be a dodging of the point. Because the idea that because other people are also guilty of something, we can support someone who is, seems to not only go against the teachings of Christ, but also it goes against the basic libertarian principles that everybody in these movements are supposed to hold.
That's time. So for Jeremiah, next question's to you. Donald Trump was the first president since Jimmy Carter to not involve U.S. troops in any new wars. He also arranged for the end of the war in Afghanistan. When comparing average Democrat voters and politicians to the average Republican voters and politicians, there's been a swing toward the GOP when it comes to being anti-war. Trump is even claiming to be against the wars in his campaign ads. Are the lives that might be saved alone both in the past, in the present, and in the future, not worth consideration for people who consider themselves libertarians?
I would like to see the numbers, because whenever somebody tells me that Trump is somehow anti-war or not involving U.S. troops, first off, he specifically involved quite a bit of boots on the ground in various locations and for various purposes, most notably assisting the genocide in Yemen, bombing Syria, and a variety of other things. The fact that he didn't start the wars does not actually mean that he didn't start anything, including precipitating October 7th and likely also heightening the tensions between Russia and Ukraine with sanctions, which are considered an act of war by libertarians like Ron Paul, and sanctioning the aid from Ukraine, which is also, an act of war. Agitating and increasing tensions in those regions did nothing for peace. Neither did tearing up peace treaties, neither did having a whole lot of problems, let's just say, endorsing some rather unseemly people while supporting Saudi Arabia with massive arms deals and huge amounts of capitulation toward basically any policy that could enrich his billionaire buddies overseas. He didn't mind people dying. He broke enough drone records that he had to remove the reporting mandate. He was not bombing people. And the idea that he's suddenly going to not bomb people now is absurd. He's going to do the same things that he did before, which was pretend that he's not warlike while being warlike, and his followers will pretend that anything he does that is warlike isn't happening. It happened before, it'll happen again. It's already happening in certain libertarian circles where they're pretending that he was anti-war when he wasn't. It's an absurd claim. Additionally, I would wager that if you actually looked at the raw numbers, U.S. direct involvement in war has dropped since he got out. They're still waging proxy wars, and arguably Israel is part of that proxy war system, still getting a massive amount of foreign aid. But Trump has told Netanyahu to finish the job. He wants that to work. And he also has supported aid to Ukraine and has been a vocal supporter of NATO and a variety of other things. So the idea that Trump is somehow going to be a difference to the status quo in terms of the military-industrial complex with his previous appointees and his present strategy and mentality seems to me to be trusting the hiss of a snake to not precede a bite.
Thank you for that. Jacob, 1 minute to respond.
Okay, so again, a lot there I would agree with, but let me pull out a couple things I would disagree on. I'm not sure that Trump really escalated conflict with Russia and Ukraine. I actually think that if Trump had won another term, I don't think that war would have broken out. I'm not saying what Trump did was necessarily wise, but he was kind of like equally not playing into Ukraine or Russia, but still trying to be diplomatic. He was against adding Ukraine to NATO, which was the big red line that the Russian government and Putin had. So again, it's one of those counterfactuals we can't know for sure, but I tend to think that Trump would have prevented, had he been in power, of war. I think Biden, just his policy decisions as well as his connections with his son and all that with the Ukrainian government and all that. I think with Biden it became like a certainty that conflict was going to break out. As far as the Iranian bombing, again, that wasn't good, but it's like compared to the neocons who did regime change, one bomb and done is at least a little bit better.
Thank you. Continuing that subject, the bulk of the questions, so the audience submitted these questions, the bulk of them were about this one subject. And I apologize because I tried to consolidate them as much as possible, but it's about Trump's anti-war credentials. So this question's for you, Jacob. Under Trump, drone strikes went up over 400%, and he authorized the use of the first Moab bomb ever. Although he didn't declare any new wars, and actually Obama technically didn't either, kinetic military action, right? But while he didn't get involved in new conflicts, civilian deaths compared to his predecessors went up 330% towards innocent civilians. And those are only the deaths we know about, since Trump eliminated the rule about reporting all drone strike deaths. Ludwig von Mises said that one cannot be both anti-trade or anti-immigration and anti-war. as the former lead directly to war. Donald Trump is proudly anti-free trade and anti-immigration. Trump has also said he wants to finish off Palestinians, turn Iran into a glass sheet, and begin to ramp up for a war with China. How then can he also be anti-war, since he not only supports immigration and business policies that lead to war, but also wants to formally engage in even more military conflicts than his rival does, on top of his already unprecedented rate of killing innocent people?
Okay, well, there's a lot there, but all right. So Trump's not anti-war. I mean, let's just be frank about that. He's not libertarian. He's not anti-war. This is the entire case I have to make is just basically that Trump is better than the status quo. Not good enough, but we're playing with what we got. I think Trump is better when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. I think that in terms of his general, I think the problem is that Trump was surrounded by just the worst people in the last administration. And I do think that, not from like an anti-war position, but just from I want to focus on America. It's a very protectionist, isolationist kind of perspective that he wanted to do more and had his hands tied. And I'm somewhat optimistic that the team he's hopefully, I mean, I say hopefully because I have seen some reports saying that the people he's considering for general, if he wins again, wouldn't be, or Secretary of State wouldn't be the best choices. So again, it's kind of like, who knows, right? But I think there's a little bit of case for optimism that perhaps he'll be surrounded with some people who would be more in favor of trying to, especially because this would be his last term, because he can't run for a third term, that he would be trying to get as much done as possible, including trying to get us out of as many conflicts as possible. I do think he would generally support, like rhetorically, Israel doing whatever it takes. But I think that not just him, but I think that the general MAGA right-wing coalition right now, even if they're bad on the Israel position, they don't understand the history, they don't understand what led to October 7th, they're still saying, well, we shouldn't be funding it. We should be getting out of, all foreign entanglements and whatnot. And so I think that's a good start in the right direction. I think there was a lot there. I'm trying to remember if I got all of the things you brought up. You brought up
stuff, anti-trade, anti-immigration.
Oh, anti-trade immigration. Well, listen, the tariffs aren't great. If he passes tariffs and does nothing, that's not good. If he passes tariffs and eliminates like the income tax, that's something that can be considered a net positive. I'm not pro-tariff, and I will criticize Trump's tariff plan. There are worse evils. When it comes to immigration, I mean, that's a whole can of worms. We'd have to turn this into an immigration debate. I will say that I don't think that Kamala Harris is necessarily better on immigration. I mean, I think no matter who's in the White House, immigration's an issue, and they just selectively let some people in while, caging and deporting a bunch of other people. So, and this kind of goes for war and immigration, right? Because I think like every term you can compare the current person to the last person and go like, it's gotten worse. It's like, yeah, but it's just worse until the next one. So then maybe Trump will double down and make it worse again. But I guess we just have to see. I'm out of time.
Jeremiah, 1 minute to rebut on that.
So the first thing I'll say is that the actual libertarian solution that would be good for liberty would be to eliminate the income tax and replace it with nothing, and to slash the size of the American budget to the point where you could do that. And this would mean slashing a significant amount of government bureaucracy and, maybe making it more government efficient. But he's not going to do that. He's going to instigate tariffs, and those tariffs are going to depress wages, get people fired, and raise prices of goods and services, all while the people most affected by those will be the poor, who already basically didn't pay any income tax to begin with. The income tax is mostly paid by the rich, who would massively benefit by no longer having to pay those and by having more trade done in their own rich locations. So it's not actually good for the common person or for liberty. It is an act of war. Tariffs are basically trade sanctions, and additionally, the idea that Trump is going to be somehow better on any of these things, when he literally had the chance to do this while he was in office, and his tariffs operated so poorly that Ron Paul called the mischief, is absurd.
Jeremiah, next question's for you. We're going to separate out two events because it's going to sound like a question for Jacob, but it is a question for you. Twice in American history, Libertarian Party and its officials have tried the strategy of selling out to the GOP, giving the GOP big government controls that they wanted, and the Libertarians got none of what they wanted in return. Even the Libertarians who orchestrated those attempts recognize that these were complete and abject failures. Nobody is debating that. However, Angela McArdle, on this very show, said the difference between this time and the last times is those past times that the Libertarians sold out to the GOP. This time, she's telling the Libertarians to remain in the party and make the GOP come to them. Given this change in strategy, the different people Trump promises to have in his cabinet, and the potential upside over yet another Libertarian candidate who makes little difference in the long run, is it not worth gambling? Since of the three options, all of which are positive. One is it's just the status quo, and he breaks all his promises. Two is he keeps some of his promises, and we get a few Libertarian things done. Or three, he keeps all or most of his promises, and we get more liberty in our lifetime.
So I actually wrote something probably answers some of this. The first thing I'll say that I didn't have written down is the idea that the Libertarian Party is bringing people to it while it drops members and financial support, and while it has less money than ever, to the point where she directly has to misuse the email resources to send out a fundraiser email for the Kennedy Victory Fund, and so that she can use that to get $25,000 to run a Trump rally. It seems to me that she's bringing these people to the Republicans and not the opposite way around. I don't see a way around that rhetorically or practically. So that, in addition to this paragraph, should make my case. He's claiming he wants powers that are tantamount to fascism, and pushing a long series of policies that make him look draconian. From his mirroring of Project 2025 in his own rhetoric and promises to Agenda 47, his actual official campaign, to various other things that his administration has promised to do, it's clear that his policies are anything but libertarian. But he's pushing for Elon Musk to have a Department of Government deficiency, and that's enough for a lot of libertarians to give up on their understanding of history, to give up on their willingness to prevent its repetition. And then he flashes Ron Paul temporarily before this might all happen. And that gets a lot more libertarians enticed. Those people, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek Ramaswamy, and a network of other people are giving libertarians amnesia and making them forget what's at stake here and what has happened before. And for those of you who claim these are just things he's saying, it doesn't strike me as a very viable political strategy to count on the person you're proposing being dishonest in the wrong moments and honest in the right ones. Trusting somebody to lie when it benefits you and not when it doesn't is a performative contradiction. If he's a liar, and that's why we shouldn't believe he will act on these fascist things, then it's not a viable strategy to support him when he says he'll do what we want.
All right, Jacob, 1 minute to respond to that.
Yeah. I think that Jeremiah raises some valid points, and it's not a slam dunk case, and it is a gamble, which is what I've always phrased it as. I think what it comes down to, and I think what a lot of this comes down to, because there's not a lot of substance that, I mean, there's probably like 20% substance in terms of like points that Jeremiah and I would disagree on. We agree far more than we disagree on Trump's many flaws, like I said in my intro. I think this comes down to more like, well, compared to what in terms of our strategy? Chase would be great if he could be like in the White House, but he's not going to win. And when it comes down to the gamble that I'm suggesting here is that even though maybe it's a long shot, but it's still a long shot that we'll put it this way, Kamala versus Trump is very likely, like most elections, to be like whoever wins, we kind of get the same anyway. But there's at least a small chance, unlike in most elections, that if Trump wins, even if he does like 5% of or 1% of some of the things that he's talking about, A, that'd be positive, and B, I think it moves the Overton window and the conversation in the right direction. So it's a gamble, but I think it's worth it.
All right. Question for Jacob. I tried to lump most of the questions about Trump's fascism into one question as much as I can. Trump cited an act last used to forcibly intern Japanese people in concentration camps as grounds for how he will deport millions of people, both legal and illegal immigrants. He wants mandatory minimums for using First Amendment rights. He wants to give police complete immunity. He supports execution for victimless crimes. He continues to push for more gun restrictions. While some might call too many people fascists, and it's not like the Democrats are immune to fascism either, it's almost like Trump went line by line to do every fascist thing he could by definition. Peter Quinones, speaking in support of Trump, compared this to notable fascists like Caesar, Franco, and Pinochet. Fascism has never once been good for liberty or libertarians. People like Mises famously regretted ever siding with them to try and get rid of an opposite threat. Why would this time be any different than those last times?
So I would say that and this will kind of just piggyback off my last answer. There's sort of a meta debate happening here, which is like, what's the path forward right now, and what should our time preference be? And the people who say that we should kind of just continue to vote libertarian or not vote at all, I think have a very long time preference, and they think that the solutions are primarily more going to be cultural, counter economics, things like that. And I think that, like, I'm not opposed. I think sometimes it's kind of like you need a division of labor, you need multiple people doing different things at the same time. But when it comes to what libertarians do in terms of politics and voting, I think that just running libertarians, and this is what drew me to the Mises Caucus in the first place, but just running libertarians and getting 3% every cycle for the last 50-some years wasn't getting us anywhere. And so a different type of strategy needed to be conceived of. And I think that what's unique about Trump and this administration, that he's and the team he's kind of building around him, is that while they're not libertarian, they are, like, all in all, what they are selling is kind of what that message was at that DC event, which is like they're trying to rescue the republic. And I guess, like, listen, I'm a bleeding heart ANCAP, and really what I do most days is theory, because I find that the most valuable. Most of my podcasts are on theory when it comes to libertarianism and also theology, Christianity, and then like finding where those correlate, where they have a lot of compatibility. But we have to separate theory of like what's right and wrong and what's true from like, okay, we live in a statist paradigm, and how do we operate in that to A, do damage control, and B, like get us to a point where we can start to talk about getting closer to liberty. And right now it kind of seems like we only have two options. We move closer to this sort of like globalist sort of power structure that's being pushed by, I would say, the Democrats and a lot of the sort of like corporate establishment. Or we, and I don't like all the stuff that's attached to this, but the sort of more protectionist nationalist side is resisting that. And I kind of think that it is better, short and long term, for getting us closer to liberty, to resist the globalization, not like in a good way, like free trade, but like one world government, kind of global government sort of stuff. I don't think that's the right direction. I don't think that's going to be good for us long term. And I think that, we need to do what we can to become a republic again and not an empire before we start looking towards some of those more long-term solutions.
Jeremy, 1 minute to respond.
All right. So the first thing I'll say is that the opposite of globalism is not nationalism, it's anarchy. And that's what we should really be pushing for, especially in the no king but Christ camp. But speaking of lies, he's fired up the lie machine again. lying about Haitians eating pets so that he can justify policies that target migrants, whether they're legal or not, and bringing up old alien and sedition acts that were already tyrannical so that he could threaten to use them against migrants that have come here legally, breaking up tens of thousands of families that are here trying to earn a decent and honest living. The vast majority of migrants are not committing crimes. The vast majority of Haitians are not evil, but he has to paint these kinds of pictures in order to get an enemy on the front page of American news. And it's the standard tactic of propaganda discussed by people like Bernays. From a Christian perspective, you can't support a murderous, lying, corrupt, money and power-hungry, fame-whoring individual who does nothing but serve mammon and his own particular corrupt desire. From a libertarian perspective, this man has expressed willingness to spy on your search history, your computers, your networks, your radical circles, and much more, while removing your firearms and otherwise reducing your freedom, locking you down, and empowering the regime you grow to hate, empowering the military and industrial complexes while pretending to be anti-war, saying he will make police immune to prosecution and empower them on an unprecedented degree. He is fascist.
All right. For Jeremiah, Kamala Harris has released ads about how much harder she'll be on immigration than Trump is. She and Biden both continued the Trump tariffs, and they added a few of their own. She also proudly says she wants the military to be even more deadly and lethal in Gaza and Ukraine. When factoring in what we said earlier about immigration and trade's contribution towards war, as well as her blatant support of war, isn't she just simply worse about war in every way?
Potentially. But, and I have 2 minutes, right?
3.
All right. One of the key points is that he's allegedly better than Kamala because Kamala did a bunch of things as top cop in California that were untoward and regrettable, including helping shield pedophile members of churches from prosecution. But he's on the flight logs for the Lolita Express, and he's directly worked with Jeff Epstein on a variety of positions as proven by the Daily Beast and released flight logs, proving he was on the Lolita Express more than once at least. Saying that Epstein is a lot of fun to be with and has similar taste in young women, saying incredibly sketchy things about his own daughter and what he would do to her if she weren't his daughter. All of that while empowering a police and prison industrial complex that makes Kamala's look small. So yes, Kamala has a bad record with policing, and that should be taken into account, but so does Trump, and he wants them immune from prosecution now. You're telling me that's the way forward for our liberty, and you think that this is the man in charge of a libertarian future? I disagree. And the reason I'm bringing all that up is prior to this, Epstein is one of the reasons it's widely considered to be that the world is so involved in its military industrial garbage, trying to avoid swearing. The general vibe is that we are one nation under blackmail, as that book had the audacity to name itself, which is true. And it's completely true that the military-industrial complex under Kamala Harris would be pretty bad. But the general thing is Trump has broken records in previous administrations for military spending and use. And to me, the idea that we're supposed to trust what his promises are when it comes to like potential drawdowns of wars and troops and whatever, rather than Kamala's promises to make it bigger, we're just fighting over two people making it worse, because it's not a matter of who will make it better. Trump has repeatedly and reliably made things worse, and that's what his actual record is in an actual presidency. Kamala has not been president yet. She has not been in charge of the apparatuses that somebody would be in charge of were they president. He has, and his record already shows that he's willing to break other people's. So the idea that somehow, because Kamala's saber rattling right before an election so that she can get some of the war hawk type people like Liz Cheney on board, like makes her somehow worse than him is absurd, especially when he was buddy with Cheney and the entire Cheney family when he was in office. The idea that this guy who surrounded himself with military lobbyists and contractors and people in positions of industrial complex power would somehow be better than Kamala would be because she's saber rattling is absurd, because he's made all these promises and more before, and he acted on those promises when he actually had the power.
All right. So, Jacob, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is one of those things where there's not much of substance I disagree on. I think that what the meta argument at play here is like, yeah, they're both bad, right? Neither one of them is close to our ideals. But again, I'm kind of making the same argument, like, point three answers in a row here. But it's like, what's on the table in terms of what we can do now? In the marketplace of ideas, yeah, what we advocate for is anarchy. What we advocate for is property rights, individualism, and liberty. Absolutely. I'm not even saying, actually, the purpose of this debate is just, can the Trump presidency be good for liberty? Not even should we vote for Trump? Should we support Trump? Listen, what it comes down to is it ever possible to not even just choose between the lesser two evils, but can we look at the two evils and go, all right, they're both bad, but which one would be preferable? And I'm at least looking at all the stuff that maybe it's not going to happen, but maybe it will, that with Trump, and I go yeah, there's enough there that I would rather see that outcome, because I think that there's more roads with Trump in office that lead to me being able to, and libertarians being able to advocate for libertarianism than there are under a Kamala presidency.
All right. So for Jacob, metrically, empirically, Trump lies more frequently than not just any president, but any politician in all of American history, and probably all of world history. Combined with J.D. Vance, who completely admitted live on television that he will make up a story that gets legal immigrants deported in order to pass some authoritarian agenda and save America. These lies range from the simple to the serious. If any one politician ever has proven themselves to be untrustworthy, it's Donald Trump. Considering the promises he broke to libertarians the first time around, the promises he's broken in his business life, and the promises he's broken in his personal life, why should we believe him this time, considering that his dishonesty is increasing and not decreasing?
Again, they're all liars. Actually, one of the benefits of Trump is that he's a bad liar, so it's actually easier to call him out on his lies. I would say that, again, it kind of comes down to we don't have a good option on the table. Kamala is not offering us anything. Kamala comes with zero upside, as far as I can tell. Again, if we don't have a choice here where we can choose a libertarian to be in power. It's just not on the table. Either Trump or Harris is going to win. So I'm looking at that and going, okay, if Trump or Harris is going to win, which bad is least bad? And, now if Kamala also was offering us a bunch of promises, that'd be an interesting thing to try to figure out. But one side is offering us a bunch of stuff and has a team with a bunch of people that are at least a shift away from the old status quo of the Republican Party. And they seem to be a rejection of sort of the COVID regime and a rejection of a lot of the things that I care about the most, which is anti-war and sort of becoming less of an empire and more of a republic again. Again, not perfect, but just in terms of direction, I think that's a better direction to be. And so that stuff is just more appealing. Whereas with Kamala, I can't look at anything she does rhetorically or from a policy level and go, actually, no, that would be preferable. That would be the least bad. And she's not even offering anything. So one's a liar offering us stuff, and one's a liar and offered us nothing. And there's so many things that they're close to each other on a policy level wise. So again, I kind of think that's a little bit of a wash. And I will say that the fact that Angela seems to have a relationship with Trump and with a lot of people in Trump's orbit, and Dave Smith also. A lot of other libertarians have relationships with guys like Vivek and RFK and whatnot. It seems like libertarians are more in the ear of the people in Trump's orbit than perhaps in other past instances where there was attempted alliances or deals being made. And some of these things are just like it doesn't take much for Trump to free Ross. It doesn't take much for Trump to give some libertarian some low-level cabinet position or positions in his administration. There's actually a good chance that Elon Musk will, be part of some government agency and perhaps will bring on Ron Paul or listen to people like Ron Paul and others. So Is it going to be perfect? Is it going to be Ancapistan tomorrow? No, but there's at least a lot of stuff where it's like, I'm sure there's a million ways it could go wrong. It'll be perfect and we can criticize it. But I just feel like, yeah, I'm more interested to see how that plays out than 4 more years of this Biden-Harris Democrat mess, which is just like, give me one thing to even be like passively intrigued about from 4 years of that. So
3 minutes on the button. Jeremiah, your response.
So the first thing I'll say, that my phone's giving me words. The first thing I'll say is that Kamala Harris, for one thing or another, has made certain concessions in favor of libertarian policies. While Trump is talking about executing drug dealers, she's talking about legalizing marijuana. While Trump is talking about freeing Ross, she's talking about pardoning offenders. The idea that she might not do that is irrelevant, taken in contrast with the idea that we're supposed to somehow trust Trump with his promises and not hers with hers. Her policies have been discussing liberalization of immigration policy, liberalization of abortion, liberalization of trans healthcare, and a variety of other things. Part of the problem here is that a significant amount of the issue is that we are talking a divide between alleged left and right people. And the right wingers are saying that Kamala has nothing to offer us. But those people are saying that us is what totals the libertarian movement, and ignoring the entire left wing that values entirely different things.
Jeremiah, next question's for you. Trump would like to abolish the income tax, considering that Kamala Harris is running on increasing taxes, as well as continuing the Biden tax increases that already have hurt the poor and the middle class, to the tune of over 90% of Americans said they've had to make major changes to the way they live in the last 4 years. Why wouldn't libertarians support somebody that allows them to keep more of their money, especially during this time of, frankly, economic crisis?
Well, the first thing I'll ask, that I need to ask in order to establish this, is where are these figures coming from that the poor would be positively affected by a removal of the income tax? Do you have a source there?
Can I source myself? Because I would say that the projected amount of tariffs that I've seen people would say that I would pay compared to how much comes out of my paycheck in income taxes, and I'm not rich. Like, I'm not making over 6 figures here.
What are you making, though? What tax bracket are you in?
I don't know if I want to be too transparent about it, but I'm not. I mean, let's put it this way: I'm not making under 50,000, but I'm not making over 100,000. So somewhere in that number.
Are you middle class or are you poor?
I guess I'm middle class.
For the sake of the debate, I'm going to pause your time just real quick here, Jeremiah. Let me have you respond to, I guess, just basically the recent economic issues. I'll look into the veracity of the poor benefiting or not from the income tax, and we can bring that up during the discussion section. But for now, answer the rest of the question.
Because the reason I ask that is I did a whole thread on the tariff situation. People can find it on Twitter if they want more information. And you can feel free to follow me over there at Insanity is Free if you want specifics, and I can send you links. But one of the things that I posted is a Pew Research Center graph about the federal income tax, and how it's literally progressive, and how the bottom, $1 to $15,000 percent, like 5% of taxpayers, those people are only paying 0.21% income tax, and they can normally get that entirely written off and get a refund. Similarly, people making 15K to 30K, 1.96, people making 30K to 50K, 4.29, and people making 50K to 100K, 7.29. Those people would not be keeping a remarkably large amount of their money if this income tax was abolished, and they would have loss of jobs, they would have loss of income because their wages would go down, they would have loss of earning power, savings potential, and the purchasing power of the dollar, because they would have much less money on hand after they spent it on more expensive consumer goods that were either American priced or priced up to meet American prices, because these are anti-competitive measures that Misesians should be against. But the general vibe that I'm trying to give off is the bottom percentages, if they play their cards right, pay basically no income tax. The people making less than 100,000 pay basically no income tax. The poorest among us would not be necessarily dramatically affected by this, and some of them would be dramatically negatively affected by the consequences of tariffs. These are things like people like Ryan McMakin of the Mises Institute have spoken out critically for. The Mises Institute putting out consistently good content about this subject for many years, and Ron Paul calling these sorts of tariffs mischief when Trump was previously in office. These sorts of things cause devastation to economies and the poor, while the rich, like Elon Musk, get to pay off massively, which is why he's now bribing people to sign up to voter rolls so that they can get in charge, and he can be forgiven for whatever financial crimes he's been committing, and so can Trump and all these other rich cronies. It's better for them than it is for us.
Jacob, go ahead and respond to that one. And I just want to say, with this question, just with the way it's phrased, abolition of an income tax, Harris is running on increasing taxes as well as continuing Biden tax increases that have hurt the poor and the middle class, not necessarily just that income tax. That's just in addition to what Trump would do for others. So I just wanted to make that clear. But I'm not saying,
But but it's also worth bringing up, and I'm actually, nothing here is going to help me, okay? Because just like I think Reinhold pointed this out in the comments, I mean, it's not like Trump can actually abolish the income tax anyway. He can control the tariffs. So listen, tariffs are awful. I mean, I shared the Ryan McMakin article on tariffs on my wall yesterday when I started getting followed by all the MAGA people after my Elon Musk retweet, because I was just like, okay, let me make something clear to you guys. I'm considering voting for Trump. I'm not on your team because you guys are really wrong on a bunch of stuff, including tariffs. And so I've been going on my way to kind of signal correct a little bit here. Listen, to some extent, we're kind of nitpicking which is worse. Well, they're both just really bad and they just hurt different people. It's not ideal to just play trading games. So I don't have much I can really disagree with, other than to say that I'm at least somewhat optimistic. I'm more optimistic that Trump might fail to do tariffs or might not do it as much, versus with Kamala, I'm kind of or whatever you want to phrase it. I'm worried she would actually increase the taxes.
Somebody's more
significantly
optimistic than me? Paris
question for Jacob, and it's, spoiler alert, you already messed up this question by answering it partially here, but Trump loves his tariffs. He advocates it for every appearance he makes, and he's made clear that he's not backing down on this issue. He insists, despite every economist and fact checker correcting him, that Americans don't pay for these. He's also not constitutionally allowed to end the income tax. So with adding more tariffs, even with the promise of ending an income tax because he can't do it, wouldn't this just be more taxation at a time when Americans need less?
This is my answer. I don't need 3 minutes to tariffs are stupid and evil. We can leave this up the rest of the stream.
Okay.
There's really not much, especially him on Joe Rogan being like, I love tariffs. It's my favorite word. It's just so dumb. The only thing I'll say is that, again, it's always compared to what, and listen, these are hard calculations to make, right? There's so many counterfactuals. We don't know, is it better if we become a more isolationist, protectionist republic who's withdrawing from the world and being a little, less anti-war? If that's the cost, I don't know, because I don't know how to calculate lives saved versus lives ruined by more taxes. But then is it lives saved because the economic consequences could have trickle effects that we don't know? listen, this whole debate just proves how bad statism is and how bad central planning is and how much that everything the state does creates distortions in the market and the economy, and that's why we got to abolish the state's. Let's either abolish the state or at least get back to the night watchman idea, where it's not, involved in every layer and area of the economy. So, but we're nowhere close to that. So again, I'm not against trying to figure out which worse is less worse, and I'm just not been convinced yet that Trump is worse than Kamala. But they're both bad, and tariffs are really bad. They're stupid and evil, and I don't think I'm going to take this down the rest of the stream.
Okay, Jeremiah, 1 minute to respond to that.
So the thing is that it's very much that he's promising a bunch of stuff, but he's also a liar. And in order to get these promises, a lot of the things are going to require a fundamental overhaul of a significant amount of the legal structure. If he wanted the power to just unilaterally end the income tax, that's going to require some overhauls. If he wants the power to, for instance, put migrants in internment camps along with homeless people and a variety of other things that he has wanted to do, engaging the same act that was used to villainize Germans, Italians, and Japanese by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is a notable not libertarian. That sort of thing would require a fundamental legal overhaul. He would need a significant amount more power than the president currently has to do a significant amount of the things that he has said he wants to do, which means he's probably either not going to do it or need to do fascism to make it happen. It's not a good idea, and it makes him worse.
Thank you for that, Jeremiah. Next question's for you.
Woo!
Basically, all libertarian support for Trump is not that he is good, but that he is a lesser evil. If both candidates are horrid about human rights, economy, and war, what is the harm in supporting a guy who, at the very least, might shift the Overton window with rhetoric that is libertarian-leaning, even if he never follows through on anything like ending the Department of Education? Can you value how leaders who at least virtue signal to liberty are better than authoritarian left-wingers who abjectly hate liberty when considering a slow march of liberty towards progress?
There's a small flaw with populism, and that's that presidents and other leaders who appeal to a populist message and program, those sorts of people, they don't get their way because they appeal to a fragment of people that might be pulling them slightly one way or another. They appeal to the vast majority of their base. The vast majority of Trump's base is not libertarian. If he wants to do what those people wanted him to do when he's doing his last hurrah in office, he's going to have to betray the libertarians. It's the same thing that happened under Hitler when he purged the entire left wing of his party because he needed the assistance of the people who supported the military-industrial complex for the expansion of the empire and the forcing of his policies. That's what Trump is going to have to do here. He's going to have to purge the people who helped him get there because they're inconvenient to his particular modes. And generally speaking, when we have somebody like this coming up, he's making a bunch of promises to a bunch of people, and a bunch of things that are happening as a result of that are fascist promises to fascist organizations and for fascist ends. And when it comes down to that, the libertarians that are being pulled his way to make him seem like a radical alternative are toadies. They're nothing but toadies, and one of them is named Toad. Generally, when we have this mentality that we're going to sacrifice libertarian principles to help support somebody that might give us a few concessions toward those ends, the reason that that person needs our support is because he needs a little bit over the line to get his position. But that does not mean that he is going to go with the minority libertarians in his base and not the majority authoritarians that were there before the libertarians were. It's not a viable strategy to support a liar and his current push toward alleged libertarian principles when he is being anything but in practice and in the vast majority of his base, which is anything but libertarian. Populism requires placating those people and throwing us under the bus. That's what it requires. If he doesn't do that, he doesn't actually have what he needs or what he wants. It's a strategy matter, and he knows exactly what he's doing, playing libertarians for fools. The idea that we're going to get what we want because he's going to free Ross while he jails and tortures a significant amount of people like Ross in his place. The idea that we're going to get an end to war when he escalated war while he was in. The idea that we're going to get more libertarian gun rights when he was promoting red flags and other sorts of like draconian policies regarding firearms. The idea that we're going to get better financial policy from somebody who's screwing us with better, like more taxes. The idea that this man who was affiliated enough with the deep state to be buddy with Jeffrey Epstein in the way that he was, and empowering every sort of potential lobbyist and contractor and whatever else while he was doing it, is so absurd that it's laughable. He's appealing to his base and he does not care about us. Trump does not care about libertarian people.
Jacob, take a minute to respond to that.
Before my minute, let me just say that instead of tariffs are evil and stupid, I put the link up to the Ryan McMakin article. So if anyone's watching this and you're a Trumper and you haven't read this, go, don't even finish the stream. Go read this article. I just wanted to put that out there. Now, I'll actually give my answer. Again, lesser of two evils, and Trump's definitely bad on a lot of stuff. I think what this comes down to is the heart of Hodey's question, which I agree with, is that I would rather have someone there who is placating, at least in rhetoric, to libertarian ideas and have him win. And then when he fails to implement libertarian ideas, we hold his feet to the fire.
How?
With our free speech, with what we do, we talk to the people who voted for him and his supporters and say, hey, Trump said he was pro free speech. Here's all the reasons he's not pro free speech. Trump said he's going to help the economy. Here's all the ways he's not helping the economy. Trump said he was going to end all the wars. Well, he's still supporting this and that. So listen, maybe the optimism that he might be better on this stuff is misplaced, even if it is, and even if he doesn't deliver on a single promise and he is as bad as he could possibly be on all of these issues, the fact that he is gaining support because he's appealing to libertarian ideas means that if he gets in and fails, we then go, and that's why you shouldn't vote for that kind of, candidate. We need better.
All right, Jacob, this is for you. Dave Smith on Tim Pool said that the test to see if Trump has genuinely changed from his first term would be he wouldn't be surrounding himself by those same people with the bad policies. To anybody who's been paying attention at all or watching the GOP convention, he's now surrounding himself by the same people with those bad policies and adding in a few new war hawks, big spenders, and civil rights nightmares. Wouldn't this imply that Trump has failed that test?
Yeah, I think I alluded to this earlier that I don't know, I think we don't know what's going to happen until if he wins and who he picks, right? But I've heard some people saying that he's considering appointing Marco Rubio or Rick Grinnell as Secretary of State, and either Mike Pompeo or Tom Cotton as Secretary of Defense. I don't know who he would pick as his general. So yeah, listen, if that stuff happens, well, that's awful, right? And he, certainly picked really bad people before. I'm hoping that the fact that the coalition that's formed around him and that the RFKs, the Elons, the Tulsi Gabbards, etc. are there. I'm hoping he picks more people from that sort of background and general sort of what they stand for, because although it's not perfect, it's better than crap. Please don't put Marco Rubio or Mike Pompeo in or anything like that. I mean, God, that's just awful. So, but again, I'll just go back to the answer I gave last time, which is that, and I saw someone in the comments say that, to what I said in my last answer, that if that worked, Trump supporters would have already listened. And fair enough. We always have an uphill battle as libertarians, but I just I feel like there's more persuasive power to saying hey, you voted for this guy and he won on these things and he's failing to do so. Whereas if he doesn't win and we just have Kamala, I mean, we can still make arguments and go, listen, maybe Trump didn't win because he didn't, appeal more to libertarian ideas, or not enough people trusted him to implement those libertarian ideas. So we should always be advocating for libertarian ideas and for truth in the long run, and holding government leaders to account. And I'm not suggesting that doesn't always need to be happening. But I just, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. I just think that there's more upside to be had in the slow march towards advancing liberty in the culture if Trump wins and we allow that experiment to happen. And if the experiment creates some goods, we can celebrate that goods. And if it doesn't, then we can at least use that as a very valuable, teachable moment for those who did vote for him.
Jeremiah, 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, I mean, and a good thing to bring up is the Schedule F that's being brought up in the chat, where he basically stripped protection from people and made them effectively have to be loyal to him or not stay in. He's already done things like this before, but the general thing is that people involved in this sort of thing, they need to understand Trump already has a track record. Trump already did a ton of terrible things, and those things need to be accounted for. He's already anti-libertarian, and he has not walked them back. He has not apologized. He has not agreed to do better. The only thing that he's agreed to is several concessions, while basically every policy advisor surrounding him and that he had before is suggesting that he make things worse for advocates of liberty. You're saying that we should hold him accountable with words. I don't think that will do, pardon my French, jack fucking shint. I think that's probably not actually going to do anything. We're not going to get anywhere if we're not on board with actual action. And ultimately, that action needs to be walking with our feet right now and not supporting anybody. It's not a false dichotomy between him and Kamala, or him, Kamala, and Chase. It's between those people and nothing.
Just to be clear, I'm not advocating that the only thing we should be doing is vote Trump in step 1, step 2, question mark, step 3, liberty. One of them is going to win. So I'm just arguing for which one's better.
I have one final question. I can tell you're both eager for the conversation part of this. Perfectly fine. I just have one final question for Jeremiah before we begin that section. Trump said, "I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms." Unquote. This commission will be led by Elon Musk, he says, and Musk has invited Ron Paul to be a part of this, to which Ron Paul said they would talk about it. Shouldn't libertarians be excited to have this committee? And putting aside any feelings you have about Angela McArdle or Ron Paul, isn't having a libertarian leading person in Trump's ear better than yet another failed campaign run for the Libertarian Party?
Elon Musk is not libertarian leaning. He has routinely promoted and supported various fascists on his platform, and his idea of government efficiency would probably be a similar idea to the idea that he had for Twitter efficiency, which is to gut a significant amount of people, put Orwellian AI tools in charge of a significant amount of it, hire people from the World Economic Forum and other globalist organizations, if we're going to use that word, and a variety of other things. Elon Musk is an example of a fascist pretending to be a conservative, pretending to be libertarian. He routinely expresses that a significant amount of the reason that he has censored a significant amount of people on Twitter is because he got control of it so that he could stop the wokes. He is using a platform already that was more free before he got there, adding a whole bunch of censorship tools that make it better for his people and worse for the people he opposes, and using that to hijack it and make it a worse place in general for liberty. The general idea that Elon Musk is somehow going to be better for liberty when he is literally responsible for a significant amount of Orwellian practices, when he shut off the internet that he controls in places that were not bending the knee to his particular choice of foreign policy, and the idea that this person who has supported a long series of anti-freedom policies and boosted anti-freedom people in posts with his own personal millions of follower account, the idea that this person is libertarian leaning at all is absurd. The fact that he occasionally plays lip service to somebody or throws them the occasional retweet so that they feel involved and loved is very cult-like in nature. The idea that he's somehow like actually in charge of a libertarian order when he's empowering people like Linda Yaccarino already, and when he's building massive AI infrastructure to, censor and hyper monitor Twitter, the idea that this guy slashing anything from the American anything would do anything but hyper empower the rich, which he is one of, by deregulating their industries while keeping the things that make people like us have to still work for the system and bend the knee all the time, is absurd. Because if he actually meant that, he would be running the institutions that he has now in a much more libertarian way. He does not. He runs them like a fascist because he's a fascist. And there's a reason fascists like Trump and the people with whom Trump surrounds himself love Elon Musk so much. Elon Musk wants X to be the everything app. He wants it to be monitoring our finances, our health records, he said to submit the other day to his AI system. He is an Orwellian, terrible, terrible dictator of a person. And so many people don't recognize that because they don't want to, because he's made a whole lot of promises to do things that are better for liberty and failed to deliver. I wonder if that seems familiar.
Jacob, 1 minute to respond.
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, Jeremiah focused a lot on Elon Musk there, but I want to focus more on the just the question that was asked. And yeah, again, I think this is just a really simple calculation for me. One side offers. I mean, so I think the one thing that was said Kamala offers is saying, I can't even remember. Jeremiah, what was the one thing that Kamala? Like pardoning some people when it comes to like drug crimes and whatnot. And listen, that's not nothing. We have the world's biggest prison population, and granted, she contributed to that in her past. Yeah, so
just to be clear, fuck the top cop.
Right. So yeah, that would be good, but I just that seems to be like the only thing, and I weigh that against all the stuff that, and maybe it's all lip service, but it's just like one of these clowns is going to win. One of these evil people are going to win and be in that position. So the one that's throwing a bunch of, advertisements at me as a libertarian saying, we're going to do all this stuff. I'm like, all right, I want to see that. I want to see what you do with it. Like, I'm not saying I'm highly optimistic, but I'm like, I'm going to roll the dice and see what happens. Because I just don't think when it comes to these two candidates, they're both so bad that the bottom for both is, to me, about the same.
It's now time for the conversation portion. Jacob, before we start that, this is your show. I know we wanted to keep it around 90 minutes. We've gone a little bit over just a few times. Would you like to shorten the conversation part to 10 minutes and keep it around the 90-minute time frame? Or are you fine with staying up late and going the full 20 minutes?
I need to hop off at 10 o'clock. So
let's make it 10 minutes then. 10 minutes of conversation start now. Go ahead, guys.
All right, Jeremiah, go ahead.
I mean, I'll just say, I'm not going to be placated or bought. I know these people are liars. And here's the other half of it that I think is really important. If he does do all this stuff with libertarians, any amount of blame for anything that goes wrong will be squarely put on us in the future, because this is what happens when libertarians get in charge. And I don't see that as a good thing, because guaranteeably things will go sideways.
So I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I hear you there. That's always a risk. But I feel like we get blamed for stuff anyway. Like, I hear Michael Knowles and Andrew Wilson, getting on huge platforms and going like, well, the problem is that the conservatives were duped by the libertarians in the in the late 20th century. And that's what led to all this mess. It's like, yeah.
And they really like Trump and vice versa.
Right. My point is that I think libertarians tend to just it's easy to like libertarians and also libertarianism, like free markets and just like the general idea, like the government wasn't the savior or the one in control here. Like, people always blame that, right? And people always go, well, the solution was that there was too much freedom. No one's ever like, well, the problem here was that there wasn't enough freedom. That's never what people appeal to. So, I mean, I think we're always having that sort of uphill battle. I guess I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, I agree with you. I want to make sure this is partly just to kind of like make sure we're not speaking past one another. Like we probably have a lot of overlap in terms of agreement towards things that need to be done to advance liberty in the long term. Like, we need to educate people. We need to build counter institutions on multiple levels, right? We need to get people out of public schools. Like, there's so many things that need to happen. And I would like to see and I don't want to make this a debate about the Libertarian Party, because again, that's just limited time here. I'd like to see the Libertarian Party grow. I'd love to see us run a candidate in a campaign who could, do what Ron Paul did, but from the Libertarian Party, not from the Republican Party. Wake a lot of people up and make a lot of noise. For whatever the reasons for it, Chase hasn't done that. And even if I was going to vote for Chase, we would still be left with he's not going to win. Trump or Harris is going to win.
But here's the thing. This happens after multi-million-dollar Trump rallies were thrown by Angela McArdle. And this happens after record low spending on Chase Oliver. And this happens after record amounts of people have been dropping off the party and not supporting it financially because of various terrible decisions, both on a messaging and practical level, made by the Mises Caucus. And this happens after a significant amount of bad foibles and general problems with other coalitions, like the previous Rage Against the War Machine rally, which, twice convicted child predators, tankies, and other sorts of miscreants are generally not good for libertarian messaging. So the general idea that somehow the Chase campaign not doing well is in a vacuum and not the direct result of decisions made by people who were pissed sore that he lost and that their guy didn't get in, is somehow, I think that's the vacuum that we shouldn't be keeping this in. There's historical context here that matters, and Chase would not be getting the shaft if we had better management that was more committed to liberty and less committed to building this dumb social club where they get their relevance.
Here's the thing. I don't agree with you, but even if I did, Chase still wouldn't be the one who's winning, is my point.
Sure.
That even if Chase was did as well as Gary Johnson, right, and got a lot of votes and raised a lot of money, Jorgensen raised a lot of money too. It's I'm not saying there are separate conversations that have to be had. And all I'm saying is that when we're talking about a preference, we can do that another time, perhaps. But for right now, it's just what's the preference, right? And I'm saying that in terms of the long, slow march towards liberty, one side has a lot in their column in terms of things they're injecting into the conversation about libertarianism or things that are adjacent to libertarianism. Just to list them off, I mean, we have one candidate who is not from the sort of conveyor belt of just politicians who are just going to be carbon copies of just whatever the regime says that they're going to do. Now Trump's a corporatist and he's got his own baggage, but he's different and the team around him is a little bit different. There seems to be now granted, Operation Warp Speed, very bad, but what they're running on right now, and the people around him, it's sort of a rejection of the sort of COVID regime and the sort of increase in state control of our lives. Again, this is all rhetoric. When we get to the policy level, I agree that there's a little bit more nuance here. But what's attracting people to Trump, what's attracting people to his rhetoric and the people around him in his orbit, is that they're running a message of saying, no, we actually need less government in our lives and less government in the world, and we need to be more of a republic again. And they're, signaling to libertarian ideas. They're signaling Ron Paul. They're signaling Free Ross. So even if none of this stuff, I know you kind of answered some of this before, but I wasn't satisfied. I want to dive that into more. I don't see how that's not a positive to let's really make that the thing of Trump wins, and it's okay, here's all the stuff that you said you were going to do, and then let's be as loud as we can saying, all right, free Ross. Okay, Ross is freed. All right, go abolish that Department of Education. Go start, lobbying to Congress to abolish the income tax. Who's a libertarian that you're putting in your cabinet? All these different things. Hey, where's this Department of Government Efficiency? Put Elon Musk in. Get Ron Paul there. And even if he fails at every single layer, that is such an opportunity to have libertarian ideas in the centerfold of the public discourse. And I think that's worth just from a pure what's better for liberty and could this be good for liberty? I just see a lot of upside there.
To balance the time of talking, Jeremiah, you're going to have to take the last 3 minutes just responding to that.
Yeah.
And then we will go to conclusion.
So the first thing I'll say is that we're on a Christian channel. And despite the fact that I've gotten foul multiple times in this when I should not have, the general thing that
not as bad as Scott Horton.
The general thing that I'll say is Job 36:18 says, because there is wrath, beware lest he take thee away with his stroke, then a great ransom cannot deliver thee. It is about not taking bribes. Similarly, the line in Exodus, you must not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and corrupts the words of the righteous. It also says in Deuteronomy, cursed be anyone who takes a bribe to shed innocent blood. So, in general, what that tells us is that when you're trying to position yourself as somebody with a both libertarian and Christian message, you cannot simply say that Trump is speaking enough sweet words into your ears to say that he is worth support. He is bribing you. He is taking you for a ride, and he is doing this while actively, historically, having supported the opposite of what he suggests he's going to do. And he's also doing all of this while at the same time supporting the same people that he supported before and worse policies than ever, like the, spending a year in jail if you burn the flag thing. And this is all while supporting a significant amount of anti-freedom and other anti-free speech policies. So let's be real here that Trump is not supporting freedom just because he is bribing you with certain enticements like people you like in charge. That is what these people always do. Their record is that they will always try to bribe you by bringing in people, certain policies, certain little attaboys, certain money, certain lessened restrictions in your particular camp, but not in other people's where there'll be more restrictions. It's the same politician playbook that has always been read to the public, and it's being read to us like the riot act.
That could all be true, but here's the thing: if Trump wins and he fails on all that, that's still, like I've said, we can just tell people look at how he's not measuring up to that.
If you mean like we would be doing now if we were talking about his existing record?
Well, sure. I don't think what he ran on before and his existing team and all that, there wasn't as much overt libertarian stuff there was some, but I don't think it's quite, it's not quite the same in volume. I think that if Trump loses, all you're going to hear from all these people is Trump didn't get in, so he couldn't do any of it. So they're just going to continue. So
awesome.
Anyway,
then they can be proven right in 4 more years after they say, well, you miss me yet? It'll be the same rhetorical device either way. And they are already known to lie and make excuses for the man in the present. So let's not pretend that if he did have another 4 years, that those same people wouldn't be making the same excuses.
Well, some of them,
saying,
but
they're always got in its way and all this other shit.
We got to get to the closing.
Give us one. Hold on. Give us one more minute here.
All right, take 1 minute. All right. It's your show.
I know.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of them aren't going to be reachable. But we should always be, it's a very Christian idea, we should always be trying to gather the remnant. And I just feel like there's more opportunity to reach the remnant with a Trump presidency than there is with a Kamala presidency. Not that there's not opportunity even if Trump loses. I still think there is. I'm not putting my faith or my hope in Trump winning. I will admit that I am tickled by all the libertarian signaling, and that, my post was mostly made out of an emotional Ron Paul fanboy moment where I was just like, hell yeah, let's get Ron Paul in there. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. But I just think it's cool that that's even something that people are talking about and getting excited about. And I like that libertarian ideas are something that people are getting excited about and that they're talking about. And some will make excuses and deflect, but I would rather, I think we have agreed this. I'm more optimistic than you.
Yes.
Let Jeremiah respond. Also,
Jeremiah, real quick respond.
if Trump wins, we're gonna do a flag burning ceremony together because, free speech is free speech.
Also, just to be super clear, the idea that we're going to get the remnant, that the remnant will be somehow like a good investment, we could already get the remnant even if he loses. We could already get the people who are sour that the system kept him out. But the general vibe is that the vast majority of people who previously supported Trump, they kept supporting Trump even after he did all the things that he did, which means that those people are going to keep supporting Trump even if he does all the same kinds of anti-freedom measures in the future. He will still have his populist base. He will still have the vast majority of the people who he was actually catering to after he purges the inconvenient ones. This has happened before historically, and it's happened before when he was in charge, firing anybody who didn't go with his agenda and doing Schedule F to make sure that he could do that more. The idea that he is somehow going to create a remnant that is sizable enough and favorable enough to our position that we can wag the dog is so laughably ahistorical that it's like it doesn't bear like repeating in my view. To me, he's already established his record and the remnant didn't give a fuck.
Jacob, 2-minute closing arguments, please. You are muted, but I like the point that you're making. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. So listen, something Jeremiah said was 100%. I mean, there's a lot of things Jeremiah said that were actually really spot on. But one of the things he said that was very important for what we're talking about here is that people are operating a little bit out of fear. And that's always the problem. And I think that some of the remnant is operating a little bit out of fear, and that's why they're willing to overlook certain things. And I get it. Like, it is so hard to make progress for liberty that sometimes we are tempted to take these sort of shortcuts. And believe me, I'm cognizant of that. That's part of what, could very well be the trap of libertarians thinking that there's something to gain here by supporting Trump. I just sort of weigh that against one of them's going to win anyway. So it's not like we have Ron Paul versus Donald Trump. It's not like even like we have Chase versus Donald Trump or, Gary Johnson versus Donald Trump, right? I mean, we have two really bad candidates. So just in terms of my preference of who would win, I think I've, presented arguments about what a Trump win would represent, at least rhetorically. It's a rejection of the elites just sort of dominating. It's a rejection of the establishment, the rejection of it's a rejection of the neocons and the Republican Party, a rejection of Kamala Harris and the Democrats trying to take people like the Cheneys and rehabilitate them. It's maybe not on policy, but on rhetoric. It's better on free speech. It's rejecting the COVID regime. It's rejecting the weaponization of the legal system. It's capitalizing on libertarian ideas, getting their day in the limelight and being catered to by major party candidates, which is something that libertarians often talk about as one of the goals of having a third party in the first place, is to make the two parties cater to us and have to, adopt some of our ideas in order to gain votes and get elected. And I think that's something to celebrate when that happens. And there's one side that's doing that a hell of a lot more right now, and that's Donald Trump. And so for all those reasons, just to sum it up, I think that's why I think that a Donald Trump candidacy could be good for liberty.
Jeremiah, your closing statement.
If Donald Trump was possibly good for liberty, there would not be the need for all this chicanery from the Libertarian Party. There would not be the need for all this illegal activity. He could just do it straight up. But Trump is a megalomaniacal, multi-billionaire intelligence and military industrial complex, police empowering, country lockdown, anti-free speech czar, who creates a significant amount of reasons to hate this country, while then saying anyone who burns the flag, even if it's their own property, should be locked up for a year. He's a liar. And he's been conning people into supporting him from the libertarian wing of American politics for a significant amount of time by promising to do something about the wokes, all while making small concessions for them, such as allowing trans surgeries on minors with parental consent. Somehow that's not okay when Chase Oliver implies something similar, but it's okay when he does outright. The Libertarian Party sold out to Trump, and significant numbers of the nonpartisan liberty movement have cucked and catered to him because at the right time, he started to make a bunch of flip-flop concessions against his previous statements and policies that might seem to be geared toward libertarianism. But he's also a liar, and no matter who he puts in his cabinet or anybody affiliated with him, this is a man who is partially famous for his willingness to tell people, "You're fired." So don't be surprised when people he puts in his cabinet to get support now are then jettisoned as soon as they become inconvenient, as so many people have been before. Some of whom are now spilling the tea and saying he idolized Hitler and wanted America to be more fascist. This is not a libertarian. This is a fascist and a liar and a demagogue and a genocidal, bloodthirsty murderer, and that should not be forgotten. If we do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it, and the libertarian history of Trump is anti-libertarian, and he is never going to be good for a liberty that he threatened while he was in office, threatened while he was trying to run for it again, and will threaten once he's back. This is a man who is using his power and position and his money and his multi-billionaire contacts to rig things in his favor, and that is not a recipe for a libertarian future. If it was, we would already have it, because that's how everything already works.
Thanks so much for being part of the debate, everybody. That is our time. Jacob, obviously, I will let you. It's your show. Go ahead and send us off. But thank you two both for participating and everybody else for listening.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Hodey, thank you for moderating. I thought you were a very good impartial moderator, despite the fact that I know that you are not impartial in your actual opinions on this. The questions were very good. You're one of the people I know I could trust to do this. Jeremiah, thank you for bringing the heat. I always enjoy you having on my show, whether we're talking, whether you're debating. Usually you're not debating me. Usually I have you debating at someone else, but I entered the fray this time. One of the silver linings here is that the 5,000 plus Twitter MAGA followers I gained yesterday got to hear Trump get absolutely eviscerated on this stream if they decided to tune in. So it's always a positive. This is good. Libertarians should have one of the things. Trump is awful on free speech on a lot of ways. I love free speech, which is why, I mean, look at the comments on this stream and look at the people I'm having on. They very much disagree with me, but I haven't blocked anyone in the comments. I allowed Jeremiah to come on and make his case and say a lot of things I disagree with, because we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to step outside our echo chambers, and we need to be able to have dialogues. We need to be able to hear alternate perspectives. And although I have my perspective that I always want to promote, I also, think that it's important to hear other perspectives in contrast to that. That's one of the things I do on my show. So before we sign off here, if you like this conversation, even if you didn't agree with me, that's fine. Go ahead and subscribe and like this. I'll be back on not tomorrow night, but Tuesday night with the Libertarian Christian Institute, which you should also check out. And we'll be doing some live coverage of the election results, which will be fun. I'll also be on David Fight's election coverage after that, so you can go check that out as well. Hodey will be back on sometime probably in November. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we have to do a part 2 to the conversation we had. We'll get there eventually. And thank you guys again for being here. Thank you guys including all of you who sat there the entire time making fun of me and insulting me and calling me a filthy statist and how naive and all that whatnot. Even you, Archie. We don't get along on the interwebs, but I feel like if we ever met in real life, we'd be able to bury the hatchet. Same with Reinhold. Internet conversations are not always easy, but I don't know. I have my point of view. I defend it, but I feel like at the end of the day, Jeremiah, you let me know if you disagree. I feel like even in the midst of our debate, we found a lot of points of agreement, even while we might come to slightly different conclusions at the end.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't like Kamala. Kamala is a fascist authoritarian surveillance statist. She was top cop in California. She is a massive, she I routinely joke that when people tag her or try to say that, like, I'm somehow supporting her because I'm opposing Trump, I say, why do you keep on mentioning this cop who enslaved black people? Like, that's who she is. She has her own record, and I don't support her. I don't support Trump. My solution is that politics is an ineffective vehicle for libertarian change, and that Trump is not going to be a libertarian choice. And my entire point in this entire thing has been to say there is no political solution.
Well,
feel
that's,
free at
yeah.
some point, anybody who wants to make an edit can feel free to make one of those, like, like synthwave edits and put like glow goggles on me, because like that's my whole deal here. I think there is no political solution. There is no way forward through the machine, and you cannot ask the warden for the keys to your cell. They imprison you, and Trump is one of the people patrolling the blocks. He is not here for your liberty any more than Trump, and that's why he loves the cops and is going to hyper empower them. This is the position I have. I oppose Kamala, and I oppose any authoritarian cop mentality like she has, which is why I have to oppose Trump and why I could never vote for him.
Yeah, that's respectable. So I'll be having Hodey back on the show to finish our conversation. Jeremiah, I should have you on to talk about agorism and non-political avenues to advancing liberty, because that'd be good to get into as well. Well, I gotta go. Get ready for work tomorrow. I haven't had dinner yet, so I'm gonna go have dinner too. But
I gotta go fast.
I got it. Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you guys again for participating in this, and I'm sure we'll be doing it again soon, sometime in the future. Yeah. Like I guys told you guys, check in on Tuesday night for the live election stream, and that's it. Talk to you guys next time. Take care.
Bye.
Smash the fucking state.